When it comes to the idea of like world, I think about like good and evil. Like, what does
Okay.
good mean to me? What does evil mean to me? And I reference like Lord of the Rings to like even biblical stories that my parents would pass down. The Babylon or like the empires or like Nebuchadnezzar. And so I try to put that towards this character I'm making, which is a knight who's trying to figure out his sole purpose in his universe. But turns out that he has something so powerful that this cult wants it from him.
Welcome to What's My Thesis. I'm Javier Proenza, and today my guest is Elias Hernandez. What's up, Elias? You just had a show. Well, you just did your thesis.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were telling me you're still writing your paper, so this is not the final edit, this episode.
Yeah, no, all good.
But you just did a show with the homie Dakota Newt at concurrent with the show, the What's My Thesis show, where the group show that I had across the hall. So that's how we met. But I really like your stuff. You're also like, a bunch of people that I've had on the show, right?
Emmanuel. It's like, it's interesting because I always see so many familiar groups and faces. But I know Emmanuel because we went to UCLA together.
Oh, okay.
So we went to college in about 2019. And then unfortunately, we graduated during the pandemic. So I kind of had to go back to the Bay Area for a while.
Is that where you're from?
I'm originally from the Bay Area. I grew up in Sunnyvale or like Mountain View, San Jose.
Okay. So there is a place that sounds like Sunnydale from Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
Yeah, definitely. Or like Timmy Turner and that one Nickelodeon, Demi that? I don't know. The guy with the big hat.
I don't know. I think it's probably a good thing. I would be on a watch list if I knew what you were talking about because it's a Nickelodeon and I think you're younger than me.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. So tell me a little bit about, I always like to start with origin stories. Like, when did you realize that you were an artist? Like, how did you what did you do that was art like? Because it's always funny, like, people used to draw and I've had people, the last person I had was Cat Gun, who would pause Pokemon and draw the action scenes.
Yeah.
So like, how did you what were the first inklings? And then when did you like finally decide like, okay, I take on this burden and accept that I'm an artist?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's actually something I'm writing about in my thesis, and it's something I'm seeing throughout my body of work. But for me, my introduction to art was card games, like tabletop card games like Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon.
Oh, for real?
And then eventually it came like Magic the Gathering. But it actually started off by my parents giving me a deck of cards. And just because during that time it was so expensive in the Bay Area. And so we would move around like city to city. And so my escape was just like, oh, I'll play card games to distract myself and knowing my parents were working. But I used to collect them and I liked the drawings. Like they were just so like cool. Like there was like magicians and like dark lords and like these knights. And so I would just grab a piece of paper and trace it and copy it. Kind of like the idea of like,
so like this size, the images this size. I haven't seen a Magic the Gathering card in a while, but they become memes sometimes, which is fun. Yeah. That's cool. So like, wait, so what city in the Bay Area or did you live in? It sounds like you moved to a couple.
So my parents, so my mom's side,
By the way, you sound like you could be from Miami.
Yeah,
your accent.
That's crazy.
Your parents speak Spanish, no?
They do.
Yeah.
So it's all good. But I guess the origin is that my mom was born in Mountain View, and then she was raised in Mexico. It was just cheaper for them to raise her there, and so she grew up in Jalisco.
It's probably kind of dope too, though.
Yeah, having that's pretty cool. And then my parents met in like Mountain View because my dad's from El Salvador and he fled during the Civil War.
Okay.
And they found a space in Mountain View. They had family there. And then from there they had me, and I remember vividly growing up around Mountain View for a while. But from Mountain View we moved to San Jose, and from San Jose we moved to Sunnyvale. So I guess currently my parents live in Sunnyvale.
All right. Is it like I'm because of Sunnydale, I'm imagining the same kind of place.
What?
Like as Buffy. Have you ever watched that?
I haven't watched it, but I heard of it.
Just like small California.
It's small suburban. It's really beautiful. I mean, they're known for their oranges.
Oh, really?
But not the sap. I mean, it could be the sap part, but like it got priced out because all Apple's there, and you had Google.
Yeah.
And all those tech companies. But it was just kind of cool seeing, just like families that stay there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and then for a while, when I came back from college, my parents also moved to the East Bay. So like Hayward. And then I also was like teaching in Oakland for a while too.
So were you active in like the art scene? Was there an art scene for you to be like, was it mostly DIY? What did you have access to? Because I mean, San Francisco probably has stuff, but I can't. Someone was telling me that the BART is like really expensive. So it's not that easy to get into San Francisco.
It isn't. But I would say like my knowledge after going to undergrad exposed me to like, oh, like you can do it yourself. Okay. So there was a lot of DIY. And so I would venture off, and I was so fortunate to find like these online galleries on Instagram. Turns out, oh, let me go check them out in SF.
Yeah.
And then that's how I started meeting a group of people. But prior to that, there wasn't like any art that I knew of, which was tough.
So do you know Emmanuel? Do you know Elmer and Josh?
Yeah. So if anything, I think that group came more alive to me once I like started hanging out more. Once I came back.
After you went back for a little while to the Bay. Cool. But I mean, there is something cultural there, right? Like being from El Salvador, and I mean, Elmer and Josh is there like a cultural thing? Because I mean, I like Cubans.
Yeah. I think we all have a beautiful story in a way that in that generation, a lot of our families have been affected from the Civil War.
Yeah.
And I think in some way, I don't want to say the word trauma, but I feel like we have a sense of like those stories adapting into our own art practice.
Yeah. And you also know firsthand the boot of American power, destabilizing shit, right?
Yeah.
In the School of the Americas and whatnot.
Yeah.
We don't have to get into that unless you want to talk about it. But I always find that very interesting because it's something that people don't know about. So whenever there's someone from El Salvador, I'm always like, this is an opportunity for people to hear about this shit. Because it's brutal, that and Nicaragua and whatnot. But so like what do you know about that? Like how does, you said trauma. How does that get inherited? Like what are the experiences? Like are there fears that your parents have that, or like routines that they're into, things that they won't do because of that experience? Like for example, I find that a lot of immigrant families like are rule followers.
Oh yeah.
They're like, they do not fuck with the US government in any way whatsoever because they don't want to get fucked. Is there anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, my dad, from what I noticed, that he's very like a workaholic.
Yeah.
It's like he likes to keep his mind busy, but he doesn't believe in politics. He's very against it. And he, at the end of the day, he is a very huge rule follower. And I can see that because during that time, it was like they had to side with the government, because if you weren't, you could have been like killed or something crazy. But I can see that. And I think for me, it's just I have a lot of anxiety. But it's not like I have anxiety going outside. It's more about like, oh, the what ifs in my life.
Yeah.
And I kind of find a way to channel that through my drawings and work.
So tell me a little bit about that, because there is definitely a cultural influence in there. You're not the ephemera is not American. Like you're not like Christopher Reyes would be an example of a Latino artist who uses like growing up in America iconography, right? Like the last one he had government cheese and stuff like that, but like abstractions. So like, but you're using more cultural references are they Mexican references, or is there some Salvadoran references? Because you were saying that you channel some of the trauma into that.
Yeah, if any of my references, they're more about like the art history and the canon of like surrealism in Latin America.
Okay.
I really love like a lot of the female painters in Latin America that were doing surrealism versus like the circle in Europe. And I think there's something beautiful about like adding our own personal stories into the work and blending the lines of like reality and surrealness in a way, versus like telling myself or telling the audience that I am Salvadorian in my work by using visual cues. So
are there a lot of Salvadoran surrealists?
There isn't, I would say, but for me, it's like in that work, it's more about me telling the story. Or so
you're using other Latino, like the general Latino.
There's a lot of reference. There's like trees from like Diego Rivera and the way that the trees became bodies. There's definitely that.
Well, who are the surrealists that you said some of the
like Leonara.
Leonara.
I enjoy her work. I mean, it's always Frida Kahlo that I enjoy too. But it's hard because I'm also a huge fan of like German painters, like Otto Dix. I also noticed that he experienced war trauma, and he would do a lot of drawings as well, and he would depict, like years later, he would draw like the scenes when he was in the trenches. And those are like stories that my father would tell me about the Civil War that I imagine without even experiencing it, but I can only imagine like how gruesome it'd be.
Yeah.
And I find it kind of an eerie way to draw a scene, and it kind of relates to like playing like these like spooky video games as a kid too.
What spooky video games? Castlevania,
like Resident Evil, or just like Left 4 Dead.
Do you still are you a gamer?
I'm a big gamer. I mean, I like playing like Elden Ring, or just like any game that's like world building or like universe.
Yeah.
Or the idea of like you have to go on a quest and upgrade your character.
Yeah. What do you think about the Fallout series?
I haven't played the Fallout series.
Oh, okay. I think the TV show is better than the game.
The game?
Because it made me really want to go back and play Fallout 4, and then I played it and I was like, this is not that fun. But no, that's interesting. I don't get a lot of people that cite video games as influence, but if it makes sense in terms of world building. It's the same thing as like being a cinephile in some ways, right? Especially with the kind of games that you're talking about. Although never mind. Rakeem is very much into the Rakeem Cunningham was very much into Final Fantasy and shit like that. What is it? So let's take a step back. Games in general, right? You mentioned the tabletop playing games. I played that stuff a little bit. How deep did you get in? Were you like, do you have like multi-$100 card collection? Or
I don't anymore, but it's hard because I can only imagine they're probably worth a lot when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Because there's at a point in my life where like I kind of turn them away and give them away. But I do remember like putting sleeves on the cards and like building my own decks for certain like battles with people and friends.
Did you do the thing where you would go to the card shops and play?
No, I didn't.
Against strangers? You were too young, probably.
I'm too young, but I'm at a point where like I'm down for that now. It's never too old.
Yeah. How much would a good deck run you now?
Well, it's funny because I just bought like this Magic the Gathering build-up card. It was like $60.
Okay. How many cards come in that?
Like 100 or so. It's not that bad. But you don't get like the best cards, but you can build something out of it.
So you have to keep buying packs to get the best cards, or what?
Like in a way to like edify your own personal deck. Because it's all about like strategy and how you want to last in the game.
I'm so fascinated that you grew up into. When did you stop playing?
I haven't stopped playing.
Oh, okay. But you got rid of your deck at some point.
The Yu-Gi-Oh once I did,
but
I got into like Magic.
Okay, so you left the Yu-Gi-Oh and that would have been worth something.
Yeah.
So cool. I don't know, man. I've played that game before. I always found it hard to find people to play with though. But I think that people that are into it are really into it, right?
Yeah, I feel like that's like a niche. Like once you find a culture, it's like you enjoy it.
Yeah, I think it's also probably easier than like Dungeons and Dragons because you don't need you just need one other person to play with, right?
I do admire that game though.
Yeah,
and the world building behind that too.
Have you played?
I haven't played, but I've seen like I just love it how it's like mentioned in like movies or like scenes and how people get inspired by it.
The aesthetic, and also how it used to be evil.
Yeah. Oh, that's another 80s thing too. It's like it was my way of not doing tarot cards, but playing with the idea of like, and that was like something acceptable in my family.
Latino parents, were you the Catholic?
Catholic. We grew up Catholic, but they converted to Christian. But it was kind of cool seeing these like ideas of
they got demoted as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. But it's it's like it's crazy how like superstition and all that stuff. Like I remember my grandma putting an egg underneath my bed for like bad luck or something, or
an egg,
or an egg, and it will like take all like the evil stuff out.
The sandimas, you tie a knot when you lose something. You tie a knot to sandimas. My mom still tells me that shit. Like it's funny in like Cuban culture. It's funny because there's like I feel like my parents weren't into Santeria and shit like that, but they were afraid of it. You know, like it's like, and I think that comes from the fact that they probably also engaged in some slight folk magic, like tying the knot to Sandimas and stuff like that. I don't know. Do you guys have like is there a Salvadoran like cultural heritage that is unique, that pre-Columbian, that I'm not aware of? Or has that pretty much all just been lost because of wars and American.
I think it's been lost, and also my father's at a point where like when he immigrated, I feel like he got Americanized in some sort of sense.
Yeah.
But I know in certain like cities they have their own practice and rituals, or like festivals or saints that they pray to.
So their own version of because in Cuba it was orishas, like there were Oshun gods, and a lot of the Caribbean has that too. Like I know in the Bahamas and whatnot, a lot of the Nigerian practices that to continue practicing their religion, they just kind of made them saints within. So there's a San Lázaro and stuff like that. I don't know. You don't know any about those cultural details?
No, I don't. But I do remember.
I mean, it makes sense that you wouldn't. I'm just fascinated, you know.
But I do remember, like, on the streets, they'll have, like, these ceramics, small little, like, altars with the Mary Saints inside.
Yeah.
Or, like, the bridges would have, like, them on the murals.
Yeah. Well, my mom I remember my sister telling me about my mom saying that if you ever see, like, an apple in a certain condition, like, don't touch that. That's santeria. And to me, it's like, I understand, like, my mom on one side, like, don't touch weird shit that strangers leave laying around. But I also think that there's like a little hoodoo there that she's afraid of. She's like, it's probably better not to fuck with that shit. Which is funny because I don't think of her as like a very superstitious, but then she's also very Catholic, or not very Catholic. Like she's not like down with the abuse scandals, but she like was raised in it and whatnot. So tell me a little bit more about your practice then. Like what are we working with? You the surrealism. What like that would lean to like, you know, like I would say Frida Kahlo has very specific themes that she's working with. Manet also. And then maybe tell me a little bit about what you think the differences are between your, because I haven't seen any of this Latin American, which I'm very interested in.
Yeah. Well, it was like I got into this like little lore of like magical surrealism. And there's probably like one curation of that, like in book writing of like artists in that circle. But for me in general, my own practice is more about embedding my own personal stories, which come from like family telling. Like I'm inspired by like my family's immigration. Not the idea of like them immigrating, but more of like how they retell the stories and how they're always going to be passed on to generations and generations. But in that sense of storytelling, it's just beautiful language of like what is true and what's exaggerated or misremembered, or like it's to the point where like it's so real, but it sounds so surreal in some way. Like I had this story that my grandma told me, like at one point they couldn't find shelter, so they had to sleep in a cemetery. And at that point, it was like raining hard and the winds were blowing and the trees were like smacking and they felt like they were seeing like these like shadows coming around the cemetery. But for me, it felt like a painting.
Yeah.
Just the way that they were telling that language. And I kind of want to reuse that in my body of practice.
But are you doing, you're using also some kind of iconography as well, right? Like cultural iconography.
Because I'm also putting my own personal universe, which is I'm creating these characters that are based off of egos that I am in my studio practice. So
you're basically personifying concepts like emotional experiences
in some way.
Okay.
For example, right now I'm playing with this theme of werewolf. The idea of the artist transforming into a werewolf. He's a painter in a studio, and he's cursed by this wizard. And he transforms into a full-on werewolf. I get
the magic, the influence.
And then he's like, oh, now I'm a wolf. Now I'm trying to find my new identity in this. And that's kind of where I left it off in my thesis show. And then the other one is more about, we have this like anxiety knight who's trying to figure out his purpose in life. Turns out that he has his magical star. That's his like companion in his journey. Then you have this moon god who wants to be human and take that star from him. In order for him to convert into this bad antagonist on that universe. And so he forms like these moon cults that follow him around.
Moon cults. So, I don't know, man. It's interesting to me, the world building aspect of it. And I'm also super distracted by the fucking weed whacker.
Yeah, I can just hear that. I'm like, whoa.
It's like, I had a question and then I got distracted and I was like, Oh, it's not a weed whacker. It's the work being done next door.
Oh, okay.
That's what it is. tell me a little bit more about like the mystical elements then, because it sounds like that also is a little bit tied into sort of the oral tradition, right? Which is kind of why I brought up Santeria and stuff like that. Like, I love all that, like non-secular, you know, like I don't know. I like those traditions, and I think that academics have a very specific way of looking at that, and kind of that sterilizes it even from that like gaze, you know. So like I don't know what kind of, are there any like weird beliefs that you've got inherited from parents and stuff like that?
I feel like I lost those in translation, you know, like after my family converted to Christians.
Okay.
But there's also this weird mystery in my family where my grandma is Turkish.
Okay.
And so there's also this like lineage of Persian, you know, in a sense that my grandfather sailed from Turkey all the way to El Salvador because of another war that was going on there. And I guess what he brought him were some carpets, and he had like a carpet business. And then it's weird to say this, but like my grandfather was Turkey, had a mistress, and that was my grandmother, my great grandmother. Oh, so they had a kid.
She's the one that won.
Yeah. And he had a kid, and the deal that my great grandpa had was that you would not, to my grandma, was like, if you don't get pregnant and go off to college and get educated, but she got pregnant. And so he kind of walked away from his life. And then a couple years later, we kind of rekindled that family, and we're now starting to like meet them and figure out more of our history.
What side of your family is that? Your dad's or mom's?
My dad's side.
So, that's right, because Turkish man in El Salvador. But that's like so much less sus than like a German man in Argentina.
Yeah.
But then the wizards and stuff, like what do you think of wizards? Like what is that? Because I think that there's an interesting thing in culture where wizards are this fantastical thing, right? But then there's also like brujos, which are kind of like wizards, and then there's also like hermetic magicians like Aleister Crowley, which are also wizards. So like what when you're thinking about wizards, I guess if they can convert you into a werewolf, is that is there like a lot of werewolf lore in El Salvador and Mexico?
I don't think so.
No.
But I think I'm inspired from like the German tales and like the Nordic side and like the Grimm brothers.
Yeah. Those dudes were fucked.
Yeah. But I mean, if you think about it, like, there's like not the Llorona, but the shapeshifters.
Yeah.
Like those were tales that my grandma will tell me about.
Like kind of skinwalker types.
Skinwalker types.
Yeah.
For sure. And I remember that always being told like, don't go out at night because that will get you. Which
do you think they believed it, or they just didn't want you going out at night?
I think they believed it to some extent.
Yeah.
Especially when like there is witchcraft out there, which is so
in Mountain View.
No, and like in El Salvador.
Okay.
Because I also do go to El Salvador like once a year with the family.
Okay, that's where they tell you don't walk on the moors.
Yeah, like don't go out at night because it's just, and it's kind of creepy because like it's like we live in ranches, you know, and it's like
no, I mean that yeah, I'm from Florida, so I've seen those places where you're like, even if there isn't a creepy fucking monster out there, it's scary as shit to walk out there.
Yeah.
So,
but you know, the wizard thing is like this is sense of like, yeah, I lost my like heritage in some way or culture, but even in Christianity, you have like these like, I don't want to say superpowers, but like
no, that means you can say
super. How to explain this? Is like God being human, or like the idea of like prophets.
Yeah.
Or like things you can't explain out of like reality and time. And to me, it's like a blended lines between that and like what a magician is or a wizard in some way. And I'm also interested in magic too, and not the idea of like witchcraft, but like illusion.
So you
performing.
You're into sleight of hand.
Yeah, too. And I'm actually taking a magic class.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, at USC, which is
at USC.
At USC. It's hard, you know, learning that, but it's fun too in some way because you're performing and you really got to put on a whole different persona.
Yeah. I had a friend of mine in college we were in the dark room and he did the trick where you put a quarter inside a Coca-Cola can, and it was right in front of us, like we were as this closest to him, and I was like always mystified by it, and then I looked it up. And I was like, why did I look it up?
Yeah, well,
I ruined the magic of it.
Mm-hmm.
But then it also became really impressive. I'm not gonna say how I'm not gonna ruin the trick.
Yeah.
But that shit, that is like really like when you can blow someone's mind like that, and it's just like an illusion. I think that's cool. Do you know who Raul Baltasar is?
No, unfortunately.
He kind of overlaps with Emmanuel, or maybe he doesn't.
Wait, does he do like the bunnies?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So he does the trickster artist. It sounds like you kind of play a little bit with that, in terms, or is the wizard a separate persona? Do you embody personas at all?
I do in the studio. I try to put on. I do it in a way where like I wear a certain outfit or I have to hear certain music in order for me to get into that character.
Are you doing robes and stuff? Is it like hermetic?
No, I'm not wearing robes, but
Okay.
definitely the music will influence me, or just like I either watch a film prior or I hear a podcast prior or something about it that can trick me into that.
So like what podcast gets you in the mood?
Like Murder in America or just like crime.
Okay, so true crime.
True crime is something that...
You like to be in a visceral, like raw...
Mm-hmm. I like to be
mortal.
a place where I'm like scared, not stepping out the studio, so I'm trapped in there to paint.
Oh, really? That's what it takes? That's amazing, dude. I mean, whatever works, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I'm into that kind of morbid, visceral experience of just like, the horrors. Do you know who Lori Vallow is?
No.
Oh my God. I keep referencing it. I'm listening to, or I just listened to last podcast did a series on it. But I always tell my mom, like my mom will sometimes get mad, or like start to question her place in as a parent, and I'm like, Mom, Lori Vallow killed her 2 kids, but it's like a really crazy Mormon offshoot cult where they like literally have delusions where they believe that they're like people like that.
Like the Scientology ones, or
it's similar, but it's Mormon, so it's a little bit more. It has more to do with like whatever. I don't want to go to it to explain. It would take too much of the podcast.
Yeah.
But the idea of just like witnessing things that are like that just kind of horrify you and leave you with it. Like it's a particular feeling in your chest of like it's kind of like when you're on a ride and you go into 0 G's. It's a similar feeling. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You know, I get that though, which I enjoy. You know, I don't know how to explain it.
No, I do too. I'm into it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I also been hearing like conspiracy podcasts too, or just like stories that are unsolved or just don't make sense.
Like what?
Like this is one where he jumped off this building, and the police said it was like a suicide. But there's like a mystery of like the whole size in that building didn't match up. He had his sandals left a certain place.
Is this the Wormwood documentary? Have you seen that?
It was on Netflix.
Yeah. That's MK Ultra related.
Yeah, it's super crazy, and I'm just like, there's that mystery which I'm like, it puts me in some crazy universe experience. Yeah. And I like that with painting where it's like I want to create paintings where it's to the point where like what happens next, or like one can interpret their own ending. And I attribute that back to playing cards, because based on what cards you draw in a top if the cards you draw on like Yu-Gi-Oh or Magic determine your fate if you win the game or not. Mm-hmm. Or if you do
you ever not win paintings?
I not win paintings, but there's moments where like, oh, I wish I paired this painting with this other one, because it could have motivated me to create a different painting.
I get you. What I don't know, how long are you spending on playing these games? Like what's your life look like outside of this? That's
crazy. Well, I do doom scroll, but when I'm doom scrolling, I'm just playing the games online too. But because I'm in school, it's different versus when I used to have like a 9 to 5. You know, I was a teacher. Yeah. I would paint at the garage, then I would go home and play some of the games and then repeat the cycle. But now that I'm a student, I just think I don't really sleep.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm just like painting all day. I work at a coffee shop. after doing that, on my downtime, I'll just look at videos on like how to create a deck or play a certain deck, and then I'll play it on my phone.
So this is your main escape from painting.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I play Civ 6 a little too much, so I can relate.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's interesting to me that you're playing with this collection mindset, right? Like that the game you're playing. I just bought a whole bunch of Copics, and like I feel like that is like perfect for people with OCD, because it's like the collection element of it, and all of that is interesting. But yeah, man, like tell me more about you and where you see yourself moving next.
Yeah, I mean,
are you trying to like do career, like are you trying to be an academic, a teacher? Are you trying to be like break into the art world, doing commercial work and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do enjoy commercial work because it's a place where you can collaborate or just like show with other cool artists. Because for me, it's like I like to keep making work. I like to keep cranking out paintings. Because I'm into like even just the idea of comic books too. Of just like there's so many like different universes, the multi-universe. But going back, I also enjoy being a teacher. I taught 2nd grade all the way to 8th grade. I was also a bilingual school teacher in Oakland, and so I had the privilege of like helping students who came fresh from like Mexico and Central America, and seeing them and what art meant to them and how they would create. And that would also really inspire me in just like what they would draw. Versus
because they're on that new shit.
Yeah, it was always cool. I mean, it's so crazy how like memes are becoming like a new way of drawing.
Yeah.
Or just like logos in general, or just like what's in.
Do you know who Kayla Mathis is?
No, is that like a meme? Like
no, she's at Charlie James. She does
like a tapestry.
Yeah, tapestry.
Okay,
yeah,
tapestry
and she does like memes.
Yeah,
it's just funny to hear you say that, because it's like it's a legitimate art form now. I mean, I like her work. But go ahead.
But I think it's cool how things are changing. But I do want to tap in, like I want to balance both like academic and being a teacher, and also finding a place to just show work around. But I'm more interested in finding people who are interested in the idea of like video games, but in a different way that I'm doing it. Because I'm not just like painting a video game. I'm inspired by it. Same thing, inspired by like tradition and oral language and family and immigration, and how we tell stories to each other.
Well, it's kind of it's funny that it's seen as a little bit of a lesser art by art people of my generation, but I think that's like something that's definitely not gonna hold up, you know?
Yeah.
Like I was talking to somebody recently about how it's gonna be interesting to see the attention span of video pieces coming out of like Gen Z, because like the boomers, I used I forgot his name all of a sudden, but I know his name, James Benning. He has a video of just like he made a replica of the Unabomber's shack, and he just shot 4 different scenes. It's like a feature-length movie, maybe even longer, and you just sit there, and part of the process of watching the video is part of the experience of watching it is just like getting through it, you know, and sitting with your thoughts as you're just watching this one shot in different seasons, 4 different seasons. And to me, it's just going to be interesting, like what kids make, because I think that boomers didn't have as much entertainment as now. So the idea that that Gen Z is gonna make a video like a James Benning video is gonna be interesting. I mean, maybe they will. Maybe they're like fighting their attention spans, but it's just gonna be interesting.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's a great place for them to relearn or learn.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because like everything repeats. Like, you know, art history finds its form in current art. You know, like at the end of the day, I still tribute to like old masters. Like I'm inspired by like Bosch and Goya, Monet, and like Picasso in some way. And there's ways to replicate that in current work.
Yeah, I just don't know if I could sit through James Benning's piece today as easily as I could be, even me, you know, based on how the like how it's warped my mind.
Yeah.
Social media, you know. But yeah, even going back and listening to this when I edit it, it's like I'm like, all right, I have to be ready. Even though like I'll sit and listen to other people's podcasts, it's just my own that's a little bit difficult. So then, what are your favorite video games? You said Baldur's Gate, like the world buildings. Like, tell me about the worlds that you like. That I think. Have you ever played? There's one called. It's a one in space. Fuck, I'm not.
That's Dead Space.
No, it's a puzzle. It's like a weird puzzle, planetary puzzle game. I'm forgetting what it's called. It's like there's no fighting in it, but there's just these cool things that. Anyway, what games do you like?
Yeah, well, the games I grew up was like Halo.
Okay, yeah.
I enjoyed Halo. Let's see.
How old are you?
I am 29.
29. Okay.
I also enjoy like the Mario universe too, from Nintendo 64 to the Wii to where it's at now.
So you didn't grow up playing OG Mario, which is what I
like Nintendo 64, like the arcade.
No, it's Super Entertainment System.
Oh, the Genesis?
No, the Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES, the original.
Oh,
the Atari. Are you aware that there was?
Yeah, I'm aware. I mean, the closest thing is probably like Pac-Man, but then they made like an RPG Pac-Man World.
Yeah.
Which was a fun game I played too.
Yeah.
But right now I'm interested in like Dark Souls and Elden Ring.
So those are more fantasy based games?
More fantasy based, more like Dungeons and Dragons type of going to castles and caves.
Are you a fantasy novel reader as well, or
maybe like movie wise? But I don't know about like reading is tough. I do like reading to a certain extent.
That goes back to what I was saying about sitting through a James Benning.
Yeah. But I do like films like Cloverfield. I'm into like Alien. I'm into Lord of the Rings. Harry Potter. All those ideas are really cool.
But what are the ones that? So like when you're building a world, what do you for your paintings? Because obviously you're not making a movie. So tell me a little bit about the world building process there, and tell me a little bit more of the stories that you like to work into it. You know, like the oral tradition heritage stuff. Because I think that's.
When it comes to the idea of like world, I think about like good and evil. Like what does good mean to me? What does evil mean to me? And I reference like Lord of the Rings to like even biblical stories that my parents would pass down.
Like which ones?
Like free will, or like the Babylon, or like the empires, or like Nebuchadnezzar. And
what's
like,
Nebuchadnezzar about?
Like the ghost. How do I explain this? It's been a while, but if I'm right, it's about like the king having so much money and like hiring or like taking in Daniel and his friends, and they're going through like these trials and they're proving that God is like real. And each time that they go through or they try to kill them, they end up not being dead. Like the fiery furnace where they're thrown into like this furnace and they still happen to be alive out of it.
So did they get out of the furnace?
They get out of the furnace.
And then they're just still alive?
They're still alive. And then they're like, oh, like, well, who was that? Like, how are you still alive? And it's the idea of like God guiding them. And for me, it's like this illusion of like light, or like there's like this spiritual aspect that helps people. And so I try to put that towards this character I'm making, which is a knight who's trying to figure out his sole purpose in his universe. But turns out that he has something so powerful that this cult wants it from him.
Okay.
Which is I'm trying to create that cult. And it's something that I just created last year. Like I came into the program wanting to create a universe. So it's like there's so much more that I have to like read now and discover and get more inspired by.
And how does that actually show up on the page specifically?
Yeah.
Is there like how are you presenting it, and what are you expecting people to walk away from it? Like how much detail are they getting from how immersed are they getting from just the visuals?
Yeah, I think the visual cues is going to take a while. My hope is that they can see the reference of good and bad and characters, antagonists, and that each character is being transformed through each painting. And I think it works when it's like all presented in one body versus one being by itself.
Yeah, I get you.
Because there's so many characters I have included or talked about, which is like the clock. There's this clock wizard who's actually the idea of like time itself existing at a time and in the realm of the universe I'm creating. And that idea goes back to like this idea in religion where like time doesn't exist outside of Earth. or like
okay.
dimensions, or like what does it mean to be in a spiritual realm. And then story wise, the way I do is that I draw them. I draw the characters, and then after I draw, I try to like put a background scene, and I try to imagine what could happen next.
Uh,
So I think that each painting informs the next painting.
it's almost like you're drawing cells
Mm-hmm.
in an animation, but with bigger jumps, like or keyframes in an
Yeah.
animation.
And it's cool because it's like I get to recycle, and I look back at certain things that have been repetitive that make it into the next cut
Uh-huh.
or next painting.
How do these characters change? Do they get more haggard? Do they get more
Yeah.
beautiful?
It's funny because like right now I'm working on a new body of castles, and I'm trying to make them alive, and they can walk around.
Mm.
But I noticed that at first I started with the interior space. I had a werewolf inside his room. Then he's outside the room, and the castle's behind him. And then in my mind, I'm like, oh, what if this castle can embody emotion and walk around and play like a character as well?
So you seem to really take on the idea of like painting as a narrative form, which kind of goes back to a lot of the Christian art. Are you looking at any of like the Renaissance European stuff? Because it sounds like I always say this, but it sounds like, do you know like the Annunciation and all those like themes that used to be painted a lot,
Like the three stages of the cross, or like
yeah, like the Feast of Herod, all these different paintings that were painted over and over again, themes that were painted over and over again by different masters.
yeah, like Max Ernest and like there's this one that I've seen it repeated many times. It's like, what is it? It's like Saint something, but Max Ernest did his own twist with it.
Yeah. Like for example, I forget which one it is. There's one that is Saint Sebastian, and Saint Sebastian has like arrows in him.
Yeah.
Right. And then I think he's the patron saint of, I think it's Siena. Or no, I don't know who. They're the patron. He's the patron saint of one city, and that city in their painting they have like more arrows in them because they died of the plague and they're really mad at him. But like little mythologies like that. So that's how you're presenting these stories, right? As opposed to like, are there grand narratives playing out? Are there characters interacting in these?
There's like war scenes and battle scenes, and clearly I paint like the moon clearly wants that star and is trying to take it away. And one of the painting, the knight, it's like losing his soul and becoming skeleton form because the star was taken away.
Yeah.
And it's like, for me, it also feels like a ritual performance.
The painting?
The painting.
The process of painting.
The process. Yeah. And you can see that the moons are surrounding this character.
Tell me more about the cults. Because I'm a huge cult fanatic.
Yeah.
What are their belief systems? Who's their leader?
Their leader is the moon. The moon is this moon that's on top of the universe, and it has like a face. And in my thesis show, I had him hung up really high up. And then you had the moon servants who wear moon mask, and they have certain colored robes, and they wear red. And so their goal is to get this star alien that resides on the knight's chest. Kind of like the idea of like putting on the god of armor, or putting on the armor of God.
Okay.
So the idea of like this knight has that special star, and so once they take away the star, that star has the ability to either grant you a wish or give you ability. And the moon wants to be a ruler over that universe and become this like flesh, because he can't be a flash walking. He just is a moon that's in the sky. And the cult are just basically his servants getting what he needs. And it's cool because I'm just starting to play with that idea, and it's always inspiring to hear like cases or murder cases of like Scientology and the like the phases and the levels.
Yeah.
There's that other one I really want to get into, which was about that conspiracy.
Which cult? Or is it a conspiracy and not a cult?
It's a cult too, but it's like they're everywhere. It's like all about money in life. There's like a G, I think.
Oh, I don't know this one.
Like even the campus has like a certain statue of it. It's kind of crazy.
What do they believe? Maybe I can figure it out from there.
What is that? It's like it's even one by the movie theater where I live, which is so crazy. It's the letter G, and it's like these like tools.
Oh, the Masons?
The Masons.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I didn't remember the letter G. Yeah, those secret societies. Well, I guess I can talk about it because my dad is no longer with us. But those secret schools are interesting where they where the knowledge is hidden.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was younger, my dad started to joined like a yogi, I guess a yogi cult following this guy named Yogananda.
Mm.
And it was really weird because my mom couldn't know anything about it. But like all of that shit is so strange how that, I feel like that's a mechanism to sort of control, to sort of kind of keep you, it immediately isolates you from the people around you, even though they're not necessarily telling you, you gotta cut ties with people. They're like, oh, okay, you don't have to cut ties with them, but they can't know any of these secrets because they're sacred, right? I find those schools interesting. So you don't know much about the Masons?
It's so weird because of my family, I'm like so worried like once I start researching, I'm gonna fall into it.
Well, but I mean, you have to be invited to be in that, right?
Or like me wanting to be like in it one day, or like finding a road to get there.
Yeah. Do you feel like I've been in sort of in semi-cult situations. Like I did I was in the like early steps of the Landmark Forum. And then I think that the Landmark Forum is like they have 3 classes, and then everything after, that's where they really fucking become cult.
That's
like
crazy.
Yeah. But they just basically I would say anyway, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I had a friend there's like Christian versions of it.
Yeah.
Of like you have to get baptized. That's the only way to be saved.
Yeah.
And you have to baptize everybody else around you, which is kind of insane. Which I find that crazy. I guess there's also another one that I was like reading on, which is about like the whole Nike shoes. Like they had to cancel the Nike product shoes.
Oh, the Heaven's Gate.
Yeah, Heaven's Gate, and that one's wild too.
Yeah. Well, how you're 29, so man. Were you even born in that when that happened?
Probably not, but I know that it was talked around.
What year were you born?
1996.
It might have been right around that time. I think it was like 97 or something.
Yeah,
I was still in high school when that shit happened. That was crazy. That's called the first internet cult. But yeah, I find all of that stuff interesting because it's similar to the. It's like it helps me understand world events, to really understand how cults work. You know what I mean? You're like, you start to really get into the idea of how people can believe things that don't necessarily make sense, you know? And there's very specific like things that they can do, which is interesting. But so then what more family stories? I love family stories.
Yeah. Well, before I get into a family story, I think this one's inspired me because it's like, it's allowing me to rethink as I write the paper, like what are the power roles of each character in my universe? Like how did this person become this person? Why is this one either good or bad or an antagonist? And so for me, I like to research because it allows me to give them a certain color or a certain attribution or how they play in the universe. Another story is that my grandmother was almost abducted by a coyote, and he wanted more money in order for her to pass to the next city. And so I like that idea of like coyotes and figuring out how I can make those ideas or character into my universe. What does the coyote mean to me?
Well, in some traditions, he's the trickster, right? So as the animal itself, so that plays into the. It's funny. I wonder if people. I wonder how that term came about, even.
Yeah, the coyote.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy though, just like how that works. Or
I guess it's because it's over the desert. I don't know. It just coyotes, the animals, aren't smuggling people, you know. So it's a strange thing. I grew up with like we didn't have coyotes. We had hermanos a rescate, which would be people that would fly on planes to try to save people on rafts, because if you were saved out in the water, like that's the difference between Mexicans and Cubans, like because they wanted to fuck with the Cuban regime, they basically made it so that we were allowed to be picked up out of the water and brought in, and until Obama, that didn't change.
Yeah,
the coyote thing is like a cultural blind spot for me. I just didn't grow up with any notion. I think I was like in my 20s when I first heard the term.
Yeah. What's funny, because in my head, when I first heard that term, I imagined, oh, they're probably riding horses.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, they're just like probably not how it is now. Well, who knows?
Yeah.
Another crazy story is that during that war, because my dad lived through that war too a little bit. There was a point where like they had a curfew, so you couldn't go past like midnight, and if you did, you had a chance of like being shot or abducted. This is crazy, but he told me a story that once he peeked out the gate and he saw these two kids playing with a grenade, and they thought that it was a toy. And unfortunately it exploded on one of the
that's not funny.
It's not funny, but it's like
no, but
crazy,
it's real. Yeah, it's real.
It's like that really does mature. Like it changes you as a kid.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the way that you described it, it seemed like your dad just wanted to leave it all behind. And I think that that's one of the things that like people don't understand when like immigrants. Now, I'm not saying that this is the case for your father, but a lot of immigrants come here and they don't want the what they left to come. So they're like, I remember talking to a Honduran Uber driver, and she's like, yeah, I came in legitimately. Fuck all these people coming in across the border. She's like totally anti-immigration, which is interesting to me because like people are escaping shit and they don't necessarily want it to follow them. To whatever accuracy that their perception is, that is their perception. I'm not arguing for or against it. I'm just making an observation that it is interesting when people are like, they're like, nah, that's the fucking horror is back there. Leave it back there, you know? Which I think will help people understand, because I think a lot of people are like, well, you got to come. Why don't you have empathy? And I don't think that that's how people are thinking when they're fucking fleeing for their life, you know?
It's crazy even seeing El Salvador change now.
Yeah.
And
what's happening now? It's crazy.
It's happening now, but I will say like my parents have a relief of freedom in some sense. But I remember when I went to undergrad, I actually wanted to make paintings about the Civil War, but I feel like it wasn't a place for me, or I had no idea how to approach that.
Yeah. Well, Elmer kind of embeds it without making paintings directly about it. You know what I mean? Like it's in the skin of the like how he does kind of the inlays of information, you know. But it's an interesting topic. Making wildly political art, as you can see, is not my thing anymore. Yeah. But I respect. It's a hard thing to do, you know. I guess I just get it all out on the podcast now, and I'm free to do whatever the fuck I want.
But it's crazy because like my body of work is not really like, it could be political. It could be inspired by it in some sense.
Well, I think it's politicized, like in its reception by the fact that you're in the US, right? Like you're making work that is expressly in a style that is not is not traditionally Americanized, you know, even though we're talking about all these cultural references that are American. When you look at the actual work, it comes from Latin American culture, aesthetics, and those kinds of things that are like interesting to me because Cuba's so different. You know, like Cuban culture is so different. There's so much, I guess it's North America when you're considering Mexico, but Central American culture and Mexican culture, it's so different. Like it's amazing how isolated the island is. We don't have a lot of like the Aztec stuff. We don't have a lot of that you probably wouldn't see a Cuban painting the way that you do. And which is interesting. Do you paint or is it all drawing?
I paint.
You paint.
I paint. I'm doing ceramics and I'm drawing. And I think ceramics for me is something I want to do more because it feels magical. Yeah. It feels like it's very, I want to say old, but like very like.
No, it's old. I mean, that's how it to me, when I was coming up, ceramics was considered like utilitarian lower art form, and I'm like, how the fuck dare you? This is how we know about our history, right? Like if we didn't have ceramics, like those were the first things that people made. That's how far back we can get to know each other. And it's a ritualistic thing. There's fire involved, You can do it without
beautiful.
fire. No, it's amazing.
Yeah, and that's something I want to do by activating my realms or exhibitions and trying to see, hopefully one day I can get to that point. Like for me, it's like, well, I don't know, maybe I gotta just keep doing it because I've only been doing it for about 2 years. So I'm very fresh in the game versus how long I've been painting and drawing. But I do admire ceramics and the history behind it. But I also love mural work too.
Yeah. Have you done any?
I haven't done any, but there's one because
there's room for you to make sorry, go ahead. There's room for you to make with your characters like that. I would like to see a mural of that.
But besides, like, I think that's what also turned me on into art was like SF MoMA of Diego Rivera, and seeing all his murals he done, and or maybe I'm gonna say the name wrong, but the Soquieros, or they did murals in like downtown LA. There's one of them in like El Pueblo Historical Monument, because I was doing an internship with the Getty, and then we were talking about like preserving it. So it was kind of cool that I was allowed to be in that space and see that mural. Or just seeing murals that were being done with like the communists and like all those ideas. Yeah,
well, it's a specifically propagandistic style of art, right? Which is cool. All art is essentially propagandistic, But that's cool. Are you familiar with tapestries, like battle tapestries? I'm realizing honestly in this conversation how European my art point of reference is, because you even just you mentioning Latin American surrealists is like, it's such a blind spot for me. But have you seen like old tapestries of battles and stuff like that?
No, how does that work? Like they
just made so there was a whole era where they just, and you'll go into these palatial mansions, like I think they probably have them at Versailles. But it's just these huge wall-sized, like Anselm Kiefer scale, big ass tapestries, and they're just these really, really graphic battles, war tapestries. I think if you just Google war tapestries, there's a rich history to it, but it was like a way of commemorating victories. You know how like they say that history is written by the winners. Like it's part of that process, right?
Okay.
So you would have, it's kind of like in the Roman era, they would have a triumph or an arc built to celebrate your victories. Like they would have like a big round thing where it would tell the story of the victory all around it. There's one in Rome that's really famous, a Trajan's column, I think. Things like that to commemorate these battles. But then at a certain point, I guess they started doing this, and it was just a really cool way of like having, it's just a really like, it's its own art, and it's as dramatic as painting, and they can get some sort of level of chiaroscuro in it.
Yeah.
So it's really dramatic stuff. It's really cool. But I think that those have something similar to what you're talking about, like I've been thinking about them where I would definitely recommend checking them out, because they're so dynamic and they're so violent and they're so, gory. Not that your work is necessarily violent and gory, but dynamic is, I think, the thing that would be interesting. Although the style is entirely different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll definitely look into that. Like anything to motivate me or just get inspired, or
it's also just cool to see how people were just celebrating bloodlust at different eras, like, whereas now with video and all this shit, it's really hard to make it like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Whereas I think, when you could paint it, you could make it a lot different. But anyway, man, I've had a lovely time. Anything that I haven't asked you that you maybe wanted to get out while you were preparing for this? Any question that you want to answer that I haven't asked? I guess is another way of saying it.
No, not at the moment. I mean, I'm sure it'll hit me later on.
Yeah,
but
I know.
I'm just at a point where like I'm excited just to almost be done with this paper, and I hope I can read it myself and rethink it and see where the work continues or where it goes next.
Yeah.
But the question I'm always left with is like, do I want people to know my story or the story of this world building? Essentially, yes, to an extent.
Yeah.
If you're into it. If not, at least the paintings can exist and you can interpret your own point of view, and hopefully it can remind you of we all come from somewhere and we all have stories to be told, and they do matter.
Yeah.
It's like, why do paintings still exist and why are they so important? And it's like, why do we paint? And for me, is we tell stories through that.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think, and I think your work is beautiful and really interesting. And it's fun to see things that are influenced by such contemporary experience represented in this not antiquated, but antique, or not even antique, because I think like, like Art Deco furniture and shit like that. I'm thinking like just this traditions, these traditions that are maybe like, I feel like you're kind of in a way elevating stuff that would have been in cultural museums to more of a contemporary, possibly commercial. It doesn't sound like that's necessarily your pursuit to like get representation, but it fits within that dialogue of contemporary work. And it's interesting, like it's cool to see that get some exposure and have people, artists like you, bringing that to the forefront. Because honestly, like I said, I'm Cuban. All of this shit lost on me. If I didn't see those references in your work, I probably wouldn't have seen, most of it to begin with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like, I mean, I recognize it and I've seen it and seen those markers, cultural markers in other places, but not in a gallery, not in a contemporary art gallery in the way that you're doing it. So it's nice to have that in that space. Well, cool, man. Where can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, like Instagram or like...
Yeah, Instagram. Any shows coming up?
Yeah, there's some in the mix, but I'm gonna keep it
close to the vest.
Close, and because I just want to work on work right now.
Yeah.
But I do plan on staying in LA. I just collaborated with a street brand called Brain Dead, and we made some shirts. So I'm excited for that. You are at what school? At USC. USC. Okay, that's USC. Right. You did come up. So hopefully there will be shows soon. And Elias or Elias Gonzalez. That's biblical, right? Elias? Yeah, it's like Elijah the prophet. Okay. Yeah. And okay. Well, there's also Elias there too. Yeah. But yeah, it's from like a biblical name, but it's also my dad's middle name. So instead of being called Pedro, I was gonna be called either Pedro or Elias. I'm also my dad's middle name. Yeah, which I like it. I take pride in that. I like my name too, man. Anyway, so Elias Hernandez, at Elias Hernandez on Instagram. Website? No? Yeah. So it'd be Elias X Hernandez. X Hernandez. The website is www.elias-hernandez.com. Cool. And if you guys enjoyed the conversation, like and subscribe. Write us reviews. I haven't had a review in years. Write us a positive review. And none of this, I'm his friend, I don't want to embarrass him by writing him a review. If you're my personal friend and you haven't written me a review, what are you doing, guys? Write a review, rate us 5 stars, comment on any comment box you see related to the show. And we got Patreon. Early access episodes are $5 a month. And once I get a complete handle on that, there'll be more perks added to that. Thank you guys for watching. We'll be back next week with another guest and another topic that may or may not be art related.